It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Our archives, you can find it for free at Spreaker.com. Every Sunday morning we play the May Brussels archives. And we also play the Casey Gain reality theory archives there too as well. There's a chat room. You get an email notification when we put up new content. We play repeats every night at the Opperman Report at Spreaker.com. And if you go there and look up Radio Gunk, we have our friend Monique who runs Radio Gunk, the Radio Gunk Empire, I'm hearing off the air we were talking. You go to Twitter, you go to Facebook, YouTube. YouTube is Radio Gunk 100, but everywhere else it's Radio Gunk Empire, all the podcast platforms, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, all brand new content each week about the Howard Stern world, which everybody's an ex-Howard Stern fan, right? Which is pretty much what Radio Gunk is. Monique, are you there?
Hi, I'm here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, thank you so much for coming back. You know, you're one of those guests I start talking to off the air. And how far are we in? We're almost in 30 minutes. We're at 30 minutes. We've been talking off the air.
This is how it works with us. That's okay.
How are you? Remind the audience, who is Monique and what is Radio Gunk?
So Radio Gunk is a very, very niche business. I love the way you call it an enterprise because I call myself the benevolent dictator of a small country of haters. And really what we are is just kind of ex-Howard Stern fans who don't really necessarily appreciate where he's gone and who he is right now. And what we do is we talk about it. We talk about it Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays when he's live on air. And then we'll do sort of a wrap-up show on what the day's events are. Usually it leans towards some sort of ridiculous hypocrisy or some silliness that's happening in his life or the adjunct people to his life.
So now, like the radio, Howard Stern exiles, like you and me, right? Like we used to be huge fans, but now we're sort of like exiles. We kind of hate listen. I hate to admit it. So do you subscribe, though, to Sirius and to hate listen?
Sure, of course I have to because that's how I get my content for the show that we do. So so I don't really call it hate listening because like I usually tell my listeners, I save hate for family. I just look at him with disappointment and disdain. You know, it's more of that. I mean, I can't hate somebody I don't know. So I can't really specify what it is about him I dislike so greatly. It's just his entire being right now, his sell-outness, his ability to be this out of touch and completely out of tune podcaster is basically what he is now. And he takes 70 people on staff to do it.
Yeah, well, I would love to have a staff like that, but I listen.
Oh my God, I'd love to have two.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I listen in the car, and sometimes when he's doing like the impersonation of his mother and his father and talking about his mother being sick in the hospital and then, you know, the daily care of your elderly parent. What is going on there, man? How is that a radio show?
Well, it's weird. It's just general disdain for people who loved you and took care of you your entire life and, you know, gave you a full college ride and, you know, a car and an apartment when you got out of college. And basically were those second generation people who came here who would do absolutely anything for their child. And even in their sickness, you're berating them and you're beating them up for you having to go out of pocket to provide for them. You're worth $650 million. It's okay for you to provide for your elderly parents, you know? And in truth, in jest, there's truth with him. So you know that it bothers him to be this supportive of his family members, even though they gave him content and gave him love his entire life.
Yeah, and the passing of his father was kind of his whole dealing with that was really odd too. He really didn't mention it at first until on vacation. He mentioned it. What do you make of that?
He actually mentioned it in a local Hamptons newspaper called Dan's Papers. And, there was never an obituary. There was never anything, celebrating his father who owned his own recording studio in Manhattan for years. And, did a lot of recording with very, very famous people back in like the 50s and early 60s. And, was a seminal part of recording of radio and commercials and things like that back in the day. So, yeah, no notification of his death, still no tombstone on his grave.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just weird stuff like that. And it just shows like some sort of weird contempt or resentment that he had for him, deep-seated. I don't think we'll ever know the psychology of it, but it's definitely very, very deep-seated anger and basically just despising your parents yet loving them. I guess. I don't know.
And his dad worked on Tennessee Tuxedo, like that iconic, brilliant. That stuff was brilliant.
Yeah. So how do you not at least give him some sort of blurb, for people to appreciate who this man was? And I just don't. I have no understanding of it. Honestly, I don't. So maybe it's him just trying to squash any kind of resentment he had for him or something, or just not have people know this while he was on vacation, God forbid. Yeah. Who knows? Who knows in the mind of that man?
And then, they're living in this house with all these dying cats. They take in these cats to rescue these cats, and they're all dying. One's dying a month,
So, when you have 20 cats and you're like kind of like a secret cat hoarder, you're bound to have some death occurrence. And, she happens to be the patron saint of cats, his wife, Beth Stern. And so she'll take in these cats who are already, marginalized cats. They have one eye, three legs, whatever the case may be. And so she loves being the patron saint to these cats. She loves people coming onto her Instagram and saying, "Oh my God, Beth, you're just a beautiful person inside and out. You're just so wonderful. You just do so much for so many." And yeah, you're going to have that. But meanwhile, Howard Stern is probably forking out all the money for all the veterinary care and things like that, and it's probably costing him a fortune.
Yeah, but what does that do to
your
emotional state too? Like you get a pet, it's going to die in a month. You know it's going to. You know what I mean?
You know what? I don't get it myself.
Yeah.
But since she doesn't have any children, this is her reason for existence. So knock yourself out, I guess. I don't know.
Isn't that something? You get all that money, and then you suddenly become upset. Because the same thing happened with Sam Simon with the dog rescue in Malibu.
Yes, but he funded it himself. This was his passion. He loved that. I mean, if any of us had the money that Howard does, if any of us spent the money that he does on cats and animals, at very least you would have some aspect of your life that brings you enjoyment, like travel or doing something wonderful with yourself because you can. You never hear about him donating to any Ukraine or the floods in Syria or the hurricanes. I mean, nothing like that. Just feed our little cat frenzy that we have here, and that's all I got.
Yeah, they become detached from humans and they become obsessed with animals, with pets. But then on the other hand, Monique, Radio Gunk. From the Radio Gunk empire, the Empress Gunk.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Twitter, Spreaker, all this stuff. Okay. Because now we were talking off the air, and I'm sure there's people who think they know you, and there's people who think they know me. And you and me are doing the kind of same thing right now. We don't know Howard, but we listen to him on the radio, and we think we know him. Yeah. Do you think he sits back and says, "Oh my God, Monique and Ed are crazy? What are they talking about? I kick these cats when I walk by the cats. I hate these cats." Who knows, right?
I don't know. I think that for as much as he loves to consider himself kind of like this tough guy, take no BS man, I can't tell you how long he has had me blocked on Twitter, Instagram, everywhere. Immediately blocked me. And I was like, okay, so he knows what we're about. He knows who I am. And in some way, shape, or form, we're getting to him. I can't tell you how many times we will say something. I mean, just a random thing that you wouldn't even think is wording that he would use, like, unintellectually curious. I said that about his wife one day, and sure enough, he the next day comes out and says, she's so unintellectually curious. And it's like, you've never used those words. Like this is not something that's part of your idea for word usage. Your verbiage just does not go there. And all of a sudden you use it. And we call it out all the time. So somebody's definitely listen and react back to him. I'm not necessarily sure it's him himself, because he is very thin-skinned and doesn't want to hear any kind of bad things about himself, but he definitely has people listening.
Oh, no, wait, it very well could be himself, because Art Bell, I became friendly with Art Bell, and he stayed home. He never left his house. Okay, every time I called him up, he was home. Okay, this is the days of landlines. I didn't have a cell phone. Okay, I didn't need one.
Right.
And he was home in that little double wide down there in Pahrump, and he read every word that was written about him on the internet, in every chat room, every message board. He fought with AOL about closing down and opening up chat rooms and making all kind of crazy stuff.
Amazing.
Suing listeners. Yes, I would not be surprised. Because, I want to sue listeners too. But what do you call it? But Stern, it's kind of the same thing. He's not in Pahrump in a double wide. He's in a huge property over there in the Hamptons, but he's buried himself like in a basement. Is that where he is now? What, does he broadcast from a closet?
He broadcast. So I did a show last night, which just shocked me what he was saying. He is talking to Robin about how he's basically crammed in this little space like it was Hitler's bunker, and that he can't even imagine that he can actually run a show there. Now, this is a man who is, first off, broadcasting from home, never comes into the studio. I think we counted it out. I think it's been like 6 times in the last almost 4 years. And so he's sequestered himself down in, I think it's a room that used to be like, they set it up to be like a wine room, but he wound up turning into like his photography studio. And now it's where he broadcasts from. And we're talking about a 15,000 square foot home with 8 bedrooms and 12 bathrooms. And he's like, Robin, I can't find a single space other than, this little hole in the wall to do the show. You come here and figure it out for me. But there's no room here. There's just no room. And it's like, are you kidding us all right now? I mean, so tone deaf and so silly. And like I mentioned on the show yesterday, it's kind of amazing that, if you wanted to be like the real true Howard, you would tell us about the things that go on in your life on the weekends. You would tell us about the stars that you had at your house or your bowling alley down in the basement. But he comes off as so tone deaf that he doesn't understand how to do it and use us for appreciating all the years of great radio that he's given us. He uses it as a cudgel to beat people over the head with instead. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, just think, he's right on the beach there. He could have a beautiful studio with all glass windows, overlooking the water. There's no reason not to. It's, And it seems like, when you hear when Jimmy Kimmel's there at the house, they had that party recently that they broadcast live, and Jimmy Fallon and who's that guy, Morton Downey Jr. Robert Downey Jr. Not Morton Downey Jr.
Kimmel wasn't there. It was Bon Jovi, Jimmy Fallon, Robert Downey Jr., Brooke Shields and her husband, Allie Wentworth. Maybe some other people. Yeah,
Drew Barrymore. And they seem to be having a ball. They all loved him. They're having a ball. It seems like he's a good host. They're not moping around. They seem high. Robert Downey seems a little high to me. He's
what? You make your own fun with Howard. Howard wants to eat dinner at 5:00 in the afternoon. He wants to be done with everybody at his house by 9. He wants everybody out so he can be in bed by like 10. That's just the way he rolls. And there's no deviation from that. And Jimmy has mentioned it a few times about Basically, it's like being stuck in the gulag when you go to his house, especially during COVID when he would go visit him. You weren't allowed to leave the house. If you left the house and you came back, you had to have another COVID test and before you would even walk in the door. And you would have to give it, a couple of hours just to make sure that you were okay. And I think his wife said, okay, screw this. We're not doing this anymore. This is not for me. I can't live like this. The kids can't live like this. There's only so much playing with the cats you can do before you go stir crazy in there. So I think that's why we haven't seen Jimmy at the house, by the way. Well, yeah, it's kind of crazy to me.
Well, his first divorce from Allison, they talk about how, again, there was a basement, okay? Yes. But even when he would leave the basement, he had a little TV that he would carry around and watch the TV as he walked around the house. He was so isolated from his family and his kids and his wife.
I don't know that story.
Oh,
Wait,
really?
Tell me this.
Oh,
I find this funny. Tell me.
Well, that's pretty much it, that he had a little tiny TV. And I heard these words out of his own mouth. He would leave the basement, he would lock himself down in the basement the whole time. And when he would leave the basement, he had a little TV set with him that he would walk around the house with, staring at this little portable TV set.
Yeah, so it tells you how out of touch and sequestered this man really is. I mean, small wonder she wanted to divorce him. I find it hysterical that he would do a movie dedicated to his love life with the one woman who stuck by him, and then, immediately the next year they're filing for divorce. It's on for what he was.
Seems like a lot of dysfunction, with the family. But now, what about now we're seeing this thing on the Globe, which is controlled. He's had control over AMI. He used to have that guy on. They said the story about him with the stripper and the Mercedes. Then he started bringing that guy on. About he
always had like that Mike Walker.
Right. Which I took as a payoff I took that as a payoff to the Inquirer.
That was a little quid pro quo. Right. Exactly.
So what do you make
He's
now?
Quiet about me and. Yeah.
So the Globe now is publishing this. I think if he wanted to silence this, he could. What's going on? What do we know?
So first off, he waited a week to even address the situation. And when he finally came on air yesterday with his wife, Beth, it was all like, we were just talking tongue in cheek and it was so cute. And we weren't even yelling at each other. We were just kind of, sniping at each other about going into the city and whatever. But you can see that there's like some cracks in the armor here. You can see that there's something definitely going on. Now, with all due respect to the Globe, the other story on the front page was Loch Ness Monster finally found. So I do understand taking anything that is said in the Globe with a grain of salt. And in no way, shape, or form would I think for a moment that anything that the Globe says is to be taken as gospel. But I love the when there's smoke, there's fire aspect of it. Because we had played a lot of the clips from that. And, if any of your listeners go back to last week's shows on Radio Gunk on YouTube, Radio Gunk 100, you'll see that we did reference back to it a couple of times. It started with Beth coming down into the basement bowling alley / studio and I guess telling him during a walk the day or two before that she was going to Paris with some of her friends. And, no mention of who the friend is, but we do know, of course, it's January. And so, of course, we all, we're very snarky about it because really who goes to Paris in January? But she's flying private with her friends, going to see her daughter. So, her and a couple of girls are going, and he just went crazy. Like, I cannot believe he would go to Paris without me. And we're thinking to ourselves, my dude, it's only been 3.5 years of COVID. You've been with a woman, I don't know, 25 years? You've had like a solid 20 years of ability to go do this with her. And now you're lamenting the fact that she's going with her friends. That turned into a conversation about, I guess they were going into the city for something or another, and she had plans with some of her friends. She was hosting a baby shower for Whitney. I was going to say Whitney Houston, but that wouldn't work. Whitney Cummings. And he was so upset about this, and he's like, you are definitely going to give us COVID. You are definitely going to come home and give us COVID. I know it. And she's like, fine, I'll just stay in the city for 3 days and you go home, or I'll sequester myself or whatever. And he's like, oh, there's not even that much room for you to stay by yourself in the 8,000 or 9,000 square foot Manhattan apartment. But I digress. There's not enough room for you to stay away from me all that time.
If Trump buys it, it's 30,000. Go ahead.
Exactly. And so they had this on-air fight. And
oh, really?
I kind of feel like now that he doesn't have his parents to really beat up that much anymore, Beth has become that next best thing to go to as his stalking horse of some sort. And so they had this big argument on air, and we all kind of chuckled about it. And then sure enough, this article comes out in the Globe. Oh, trouble in paradise. They're fighting with each other on air. Beth is being kept a prisoner at their home in the Hamptons and, isn't allowed to go out or do anything and blah, blah, blah. And there's definitely truth to this. There's definitely truth to his paranoia and psychoses, but I think a lot of it stems from, and if I'm blathering too much, just tell me. Oh. But I think a lot of it stems from the fact that he really, really doesn't want to have to go back into work in the studio in New York City. He's just perpetuating this fear of COVID that he has, and not wanting to go back into the office. Full stop. Like, I think this is where it all stems from. Oh. I think it's all a work.
Couple of questions. The Globe article, do they name a source, an unnamed source who tells them this, something like that?
Unnamed source. I think they listen to the same thing we did.
They're listening on the radio.
They basically quoted it verbatim. So, and there's no byline on it. So,
oh, really?
With things like that, you're just never sure.
Okay. Now, what does he have any friends? Like if Beth did leave the house, and he was there for a week or 3 weeks while she's in Paris, who would hang around with him in the house? Like a housekeeper? Does he have anybody? Because you hear him tell these stories about, well, I got a friend, and you can tell he's making a story up. You're in radio now. I'm in radio. I know when you're making up a story, but imaginary friend, I do it sometimes. Okay, so yeah.
All his friends are paid for, right? So he's got his personal trainer, he's got his bodyguards, he's got his drivers. He maybe has like one or two friends from childhood that, at best, if he calls, it's a lot. And then he has his star friends.
Right.
The Bon Jovis and all those people, which, I can't necessarily think of those people as being the humans that he would have heart-to-heart talks with or anything like that. So, I think his best friend is his wife, and he has a great fear of losing her. And, by the way, her trip to Paris, we're literally talking 3 or 4 days, not 3 or 4
weeks. Oh, really? Oh, I assume.
It's a weekend trip. And he's already freaking out about it. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's kind of sad. This is all sad. He's manifesting
Howard Hughes now.
Yeah.
And he relishes this, he wears it as a badge of honor, Screw you, I'm the one who's I'm not going to get COVID, and the rest of you are, so haha.
Now, the thing is, too, he doesn't want to go into the studio. I can't blame him for that. A lot of people, like Rush Limbaugh, too, toward the end there. There was a period of time with Rush Limbaugh when he was first addicted to the Oxycontin that he was never left his house. He would have Chinese food delivered to his house 3 meals a day, and he never left the house. And this story was out there, everybody knew it. Now,
and he was going deaf, remember? He was having a lot of issues.
And my friends around Art Bell are the ones who told me he was going deaf and he was addicted to drugs, okay? This was in the radio world. People knew this stuff. Now, Stern, he says he doesn't want to go in. Oh, he wants to be on vacation, stuff like that. But this guy could never give up this microphone. I know it because I'm at the same thing myself. I don't want to give up. I hate what I'm doing, but I don't want to give up the microphone either.
I get the addiction, and if you were making $90 million a year, you wouldn't give it up. I mean, who would?
Right.
Especially now that it's a easier job than ever before. You have 70 writers. You don't have to go into a studio in New York City. You literally roll out of bed and go into your basement for 3.5 hours a day. Most of what you're doing these days is not really riffing or anything like that. It's your usual beating up on your employees, finding out what's going on in their lives, not really ever discussing your life, and then playing, funny phone calls and bits. So it's easy lifting for him. It really is.
Yeah, they were talking about Ronnie's wedding again today. Like, I thought the wedding was over.
So yeah, the wedding. I think it's coming up in the next 2 weeks or so. And again, this is like a classic example. He's not going to his wedding. Fred's not going, which is one of his co-hosts. Robin's not going, which is his main co-host. So none of the big shots are going to it, but for sure they will be using all the content from all the guys who are going to the show for weeks on end after the wedding is over. He should be paying for that stupid wedding. He's getting so much content from it. Really.
Yeah,
at this point.
Yeah, when you say it that way, you're absolutely right. Now, what about his relationship with Robin? And it seems like they're not even paying attention to each other these days. She's just phoning it in,
It's so weird. It's so weird. Think about the fact that, Howard has been out and about, and for the couple of times that he's been in the studio, and even the time that he went to Miami for 3 days, none of those times has Robin been in studio with him. And, he loves to say that she's immunocompromised, that he doesn't want her around, he doesn't want her in the studio, but she's gone away. She went to Thailand or something last year, or Vietnam. She goes and then sees her friends. So it's a very curious thing. I'm not really understanding why it is. And she's so desperately, she's so in love with him, that she'll do anything that he says. And if he says to her, I'm worried for you, I don't want you in, she is. I lost you.
Yeah, okay, we had a little glitch there, but we're back. We're talking to Monique from Radio Gunk. And
I was blathering.
No, you were doing great. You were talking about how Robin was so in love with Howard, but yet he doesn't want to have her in the studio. Have you ever heard anything else, like a rumor about their relationship might be something a little bit more of a sort of like a fetish type of relationship? Have you ever heard that story?
If anything, I feel the opposite. If anything, I feel that Robin actually really doesn't like men. And but she has this absolute hero worship fascination for her boss. But she doesn't think of him as her boss. She thinks that they're equals. And when you think about it, when you think about how much she gets paid, which we always hear is somewhere between $3 and $5 million a year, she's quite possibly the highest paid female news person in America. When you think about it, she for basically not even doing news anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say. Well, I've never heard her do the news in years. Does she still do the news? Read the newspaper? Years.
No, she's just a foil, and she's just a symbolic person of color on the show, which has always enabled Howard to get away with a lot of stuff that he gets away with. So, yeah, I don't know. It's a weird relationship. It's weird. I can't peg it. I know that she is involved with this landmark society, which a lot of people say is a little cultish. Yeah. I'd love for you to dig into it and tell me what you find out about them. But, certainly they have these seminars that people go to and pay for weekend seminars. And many of her friends are part of that landmark organization, and she's done videos with them in the past, and they talk about being your better self and blah 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 blah, and that's what she's involved in, so yeah, a little hero worship with Howard, and a little bit that I think Robin is easily led, and has some weird belief systems, but she's basically a spinster at this point. She's a childless spinster who has never really known true love. So her only true love is Howard.
Wow, fascinating. And it seems like Fred, too, and Howard, this kind of like a disconnect, almost like they hate each other now.
Love-hate relationship? Yeah. Absolutely. I think Fred's just there for the paycheck. I mean, how often do you ever hear drops anymore? I highlighted one from yesterday simply because it was, classic mean, spiteful Fred. A woman had called in for various and sundry reasons I won't get into on radio. But he asked her, you know, the usual, what do you look like? And she said she's 5'10", okay, and weighed 160 pounds. And so immediately the cow moo noise starts, and the fat shaming starts. And honey, you know, you should walk here from Texas if you want to, like, be in shape by the time you get here. And it's like, oh, are you kidding me? Like 5'10", 160 pounds. Most women who are that height would kill to be 160 pounds, you know? And so he has this just very skewed outlook on things, but that's what Fred usually feeds. If you hear from him, there have been many, many days where if you hear maybe 2 or 3 drops during the entirety of the show, it's a lot. So Fred just calls it in. Yeah, and he can.
And there's no more of these young girls coming into the studio with the, you know, that's totally over, right? That's gone for years.
Don't need it anymore. This is the rebranding. This is Howard probably 3.0 at this point. You know, he needed that because he's on a station where he can do things like that. He's got a pay-per-view TV channel where, you know, guys want to see something like that. Right. He's got the E channel where even if you don't see that, you see some semblance of it blurred out. And that's what put him on a map for a lot of people who didn't have him in their demographic, you know, or in their state or whatever like that. And they knew of him from everybody I know who wasn't like a New Yorker who listened to him back in the day, knew him from the E channel or from his pay-per-view. And so when that went away, there was no need to do that anymore. I feel like there were also maybe some lawsuits from women who had come on the show, maybe even particularly from the intern shows and things like that. That he decided, okay, I'm not gonna be that guy anymore. And now I'm going to be on EGT and making $16 million a year for a month and a half worth of work. And I'm going to be the kinder, gentler Howard who appeals to, you know, 80-year-old grandmothers and 8-year-old girls. And that was the change.
Now, a lot of people who have left the show, like you mentioned, the E show, all those guys are gone now. And
yeah.
Every single person has a bad thing to say about Howard. Is anybody still like him?
I think what it is I don't think it's about like. I think it's about grateful for being on a highly rated radio program that without it, nobody would know who these people are. So I think there's some gratitude to that. It's rare to find somebody who will say bad things about him. I mean, and even people that I know that were really, really close to him will not. Well, they'll say bad things, but nothing that they'd want to put on air. So and there's always that feeling that there might be some repercussion from a man who still has a audience who could affect their livelihood. So no, nobody really says they want to, but I don't think they ever will. Until he retires or the NDAs run out, I don't think you're going to get any of that, honestly.
I don't think they ever seem to run out, too. But it is something, though, a real damn shame. We live in 2023 where people have to be afraid of other people's Twitter following and other people's radio following and their podcast following, that they're going to unleash these stalkers on you. You know, like, what are we doing? What are we doing, you know?
It's very easy. You know, I have this forum. I think we have like maybe 5,000 or 6,000 people on there. And, you know, we kind of, honestly, we pride ourselves on not knowing who they are. I mean, some people you become friendly with and they're friends on the internet, and even some of them, you know, become personal friends. But as a general rule, it's okay to not know who these people are. But what you realize is that, you know, everybody is a keyboard warrior. It's very easy to sit at your desk or, you know, at your home or on your laptop or in your bed or whatever and be mean to other people. You know, I mean, I will absolutely admit, you know, can I be mean to like Beth Stern sometimes because of their tone deafness? Yeah, absolutely. but not to the point where you have to worry for yourself, and you have to worry about somebody coming after you. But that's the nature of the beast. You have to have. Steve Grillo absolutely told me the best thing I ever remember is that you can't have thick skin. You need to have dragon skin in order to continue down this path, because it's not getting any easier. A lot of people competing for the same person and for the same viewer and for the same listener, and you just gotta suck it up. That's it, and that's what I do.
And then what about
that's all you can do.
Moderating a forum like that? Do you have people that come on and say, "Hey, look, I got Howard's social security number. Look at this." Do you have that kind of stuff too?
You know what? I have like 4 moderators on the forum because you need that, especially we have a politics division. We have regular Howard Stern stuff. We have people who just come online to kind of hang out with each other and talk about, what they fed their dog that day. It's just a very, very different aspects. It's like a very, very microcosm of like a Reddit, but it's a huge cross section of people from the country. And, when they use like really bad words or they try to use like racist verbiage and stuff like that, you just, what? It's not even worth the argument. You just delete it. And it's like, I don't need this here. And if you become really bad and you're like racist, and it's like, dudes, take this to like, your Facebook friends or Twitter or whatever. We don't roll that way here. Don't do that. And unfortunately, somebody who could be like an amazing poster about other things and articulate and smart about so much stuff, you just got to let them go and have no regrets about it at all. Even if it was a friend of yours, you just got to let it go, because the good of it's like the Borg. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
Boy.
And
I tell you, Monique is really, what is this, eugenics, the Monique Gunk, Radio Gunk eugenics. The greater good of the Radio Gunk we must remove. Like a cancer, we're cutting you out.
Woo, sorry, you gotta go.
No, I love it. I love it.
I mean, honestly, you do a web search about something and it comes up with like some bad word or whatever, and all of a sudden like our forum pops up. It's like, I don't want to be known for that. That's not who we are.
So true.
And that's it. Nobody pays to be there. So, this is why it's called a benevolent dictatorship, because it's like, they keep people around because they interest you, even if they have, diametrically opposed thoughts to anything as compared to yourself. It's like, who wants to live in a bubble where everybody agrees with you?
Right.
Who wants to be in that world? I want people who disagree with me. I want you to come at me and say you're wrong. You're wrong. Here's why. So you love that. But when people come at you and say, "Oh, you stupid," curse at you, it's like, okay, goodbye. You know what? Yeah. This is my world, and I don't need you in it. Goodbye.
Or like, Stuttering John was just saying. I had Stuttering John on the show. I wasn't thrilled with his attitude toward me. Okay, but I know he has problems with other people. But the thing is, and he was just saying, "Oh, they're still calling up my father's house," and that stuff does go on. Where they harass your relatives and stuff. It's craziness. And no, that situation with Stuttering John and I guess Shuley it is, that's like a real serious, these guys are really going, it's going to come down to a baseball bat sooner or later with this bunch. There's no doubt about it.
You know what? That would be a real shame because I get, so much of me thinks it's like wrestling. It's a work. They're just like playing off of each other. It's like stupidity. It's silliness. But there's some weird, deep-seated like animosity amongst them. And then, there's a bunch of people that are like little feeder fish on the Shuley shark and the Stuttering John whale. And they just feed off of this anger and this hatred that they have for each other, and they have practically made it into a cottage industry. And it's really, really, I mean, a lot of people post about it on our website, and there's so many different articles you can kind of like dig into, both on there and on Reddit, that will show you exactly the true nature of these people. And it's one of those things, you talk about people come after you and whatever. It's like, I want nothing to do with them, because it just makes you a part of feeding into something that I think just is bad. I just think it's bad. You know, I don't like the way these people talk to each other.
Yeah.
I don't like the way they are with each other. And I know it makes for good radio, and I know it makes for good YouTube channels and good podcasts. But, yeah, I would sooner have a fraction of the people listening to me, you know.
Oh, yeah, that's a nightmare.
Have that.
And you can tell, too,
that.
there's levels of it, too, because they do know secrets about each other. The road comics are notorious for all kind of illegal behavior, you know. So you know they all got dirt on each other, you know, and what a nightmare.
But at this point, is it really even worth it? I mean, you know, Southern John, for all of his faults, is an open book. I mean, I don't think there's anything we don't know about him at this point. And they never worked together. So anything that John knows about Shuli, he knows through, you know, third-hand people. It's not like it's something that he worked with or he lived with or he dealt with. You know, they were never in the same room at the same time. So it's not like they are contemporaries who knew of each other.
Right.
You know, you want to talk about John and KC maybe, or something like that, or Shuli and Brent. Absolutely. But it's just kind of, I don't know, it's just kind of weird and unfounded. And I think there's a lot of resentment for people, you know, making a ton of money off of the stupidity of the other.
And interesting that Howard never mentions any of that. Oh boy, of
course not.
You know,
why give them any promotion?
But there was a time though. That would have been a whole. He would have loved that kind of stuff. Which brings up not an order that I was going to ask you, but kind of tragic that instead of using like Bigfoot, the real Whack Pack, he has voiceover artists now imitating these people. So now they've kind of taken them out of the game, you know. Now, even these poor people that they took out of obscurity were making a couple of bucks. Took that away.
Yeah, you know what? I've never been a big fan of the Whack Pack, to be honest with you, and I feel like, you know, using them as much as he did, you know, God bless you. If that's what you want to get away with, that's fine. But I think what's happened, not only have half of them died off, but I think the other aspect of it is that these are mentally challenged human beings, and it is, I think, as those people get older, which they all are, I mean, half of them have been on the show with him for like, you know, 20, 25 years, they also become a little bit more mentally unstable, and they can't be wrangled anymore. So I think he likes the aspect of maybe using these people, but it's very hard to rein them in and make them something that they can't be. I mean, a classic example to me is what's his face? God, why is his name escaping me right this second? The really funny Sour Shoes. Sour Shoes is a perfect example.
Yeah.
Somebody who is insanely genius and, you know, just does these great voices and does great silliness, but you can't rein him in. And you can't tell him he has to do something. Like, you can't tell Beetlejuice he has to do something. He's going to do his own thing. And it becomes impossible to handle them, you know? And so I think that's what's happening there.
Is Beetlejuice alive?
Sure. Beetlejuice has a huge following on TikTok.
On Twitter,
he's
TikTok,
all over the place. Yeah, he's doing his own thing, but he has really good handlers. You know, he has really good people he has surrounded himself with that absolutely have a genuine care and love for him and are not there to exploit him. And that's the difference. Howard is there to exploit you, not give you any money. And for a man who makes, you know, over $6,000 per minute, you know, you are providing content to somebody and you're not getting anything in return other than some notoriety. You know, High Pitch Eric still makes a ton of money on Cameo because, you know, he became popular on that show. Yeah. And so he's even used very little, even though he's still, you know, fairly articulate and is able to kind of talk about anything. But I think Howard goes through phases with that kind of stuff. You know, he uses them when he needs them, and then, you know, and they're not knocking down his door to be on either. So there's that.
And, the most unstable, I hate to even bring up the name, but the most unstable former, I guess you call him, it wasn't really a whack packer, but the most unstable former guest, the President Donald Trump. Just recently, there was an incident which out of the blue, 3 o'clock in the morning. For what reason? What's the story? And Howard claimed, I got word, my daughter, he knows when someone, everyone knows, I know when people are twittering about me.
Of course he knew. Of course he knew. But again, that was one of those things where he had to wait a couple of days so that he could figure out what the narrative was going to be and how he was going to attack it. And I will tell you, listen, as a lifelong New Yorker, everybody who listens to my show knows I have no love lost for the man, but his superpower, really his ultimate superpower, is to be incredibly adroit with what it is you can say to somebody to hurt them and to make them take notice. And he is like the ultimate scorpion. He will walk on your thigh for a few minutes and you can think, oh, cool, scorpion. And then he, will rear his tail and he will sting you. And that is exactly what Trump did to Howard. There is not a single word that he said in that tweet that wasn't 1,000% correct. And I know it got to Howard. And even though he says, I take it as a badge of honor that at 2 o'clock in the morning, at 3 o'clock in the morning, that I'm in Donald Trump's head and he's thinking about me. And I was like, no, dummy. You awaken the ire of all these people that with your, speech about, if I'm woke, then so be it, and blah, blah, blah. And you knew that was something that was going to get publicity. You knew that was something that was going to get some airtime. And so, appropriately so, all these, God, I had them written down. I don't even know the name of these right-wing podcast guys and YouTubers, but they all came out of the woodwork, say, oh, woke Howard, woke Howard, woke Howard. And I'm sure that, Donald wasn't listening, but got wind of it from what these people were saying, and that's what inspired him to make that tweet. And it was a ha-ha moment. We laughed about it. We thought that it was amazing that, after all these years of Howard trying to do like a, notice me again and please come on air with me kind of thing, this would be the thing that Trump notices and makes notice of, I found it fascinating.
Oh, okay. Now, the history with Trump and Stern. I can remember hearing my own ears, stories on the Stern Show about Trump dry humping these strippers and stuff, and the strippers laughing about it. And everybody knew these stories, stuff that went on at the Plaza Hotel, where there were special floors you couldn't get to without a secret key.
Yes.
Okay, right. Okay, we're on the same page. Okay, so and then the theory is that Trump said, "Well, I don't want to play those repeats because I don't want to have an undue influence in the election." But aren't they? What about the people like your guys? Don't they have access to those old tapes and stuff like that? Couldn't they publicize those tapes?
Oh my God, of course. We have all of them.
Oh, you do?
We have all of them. Yeah, and you know what it is? It's stuff like that immediately gets taken down because they are highly aware of it being something that could be incendiary or whatever. We just played a great one yesterday. It was just a little clip, maybe about 56 seconds or something like that, where, because Trump not only appeared a lot, but he also would call in all the time. He was an avid listener of the Stern Show, so he would call in whenever there was something, as a topic he wanted to talk about. And he was asking Howard whether or not he was going to be invited to the wedding, and I was like, oh, I would love for you to come. And, Howard had been at his wedding to Marla Maples and whatever. And so then Trump starts asking me, I hope you got a prenup, because without when you're screwed. And, and these are the kind of things that Howard would never talk about on air. And he's like, yeah, of course I got a prenup. Of course I did that. Absolutely. It was the first thing. And he's like, good, because, look at what happened to Paul McCartney. He got screwed by that one with the one leg. And, and that's how they would talk to each other. So it's a very amicable, friendly relationship. And then all those Trump things were on YouTube for everybody to see for the longest time. But then all of a sudden they were all pulled, every single one of them. And I think that maybe Howard wanted to be able to control them. I think it was Howard, not Trump, who did that. I think it was Howard that wanted to be able to control his narrative with Trump. I mean, I could be completely wrong on this, and I would love to ask some people to see what their thoughts are on it, like ex-workers and such. But, yeah, I think that was definitely like Howard's doing and not Trump's. Because you know what? I mean, the grab them by the P word thing, I mean, if that didn't make anybody, you know, stand up and listen, there's nothing that would have happened on Stern Show that would have been a big deal. You know what I mean?
I've had former Scores people on this show who are terrified to mention Trump at Scores. I don't think that...
Why?
Good question, man. They're afraid of the guy, you know. And I know a lot of stuff about Trump gets scrubbed. And I talked to the guy. But Daniel Hanks came on there. He talked about that was his job with the tabloids, was to scrub Trump stuff. Now, but I don't think that Howard Stern would withhold that stuff out of some altruistic.
No, not altruistic.
Yeah,
no.
That there's dirt on him, too, that Trump has equal dirt on him, that he was holding over his head and said, you got to keep this quiet or else I'm coming after you, too.
I wonder, you know, I really need to like do a deep dive into that. I never really cared enough about it, only because it's just part of, you know, things come out and then they don't. And then it comes out, you know, little things leak and stuff like that. And honestly, if there was anything really, really incendiary, I mean, we're talking 2023 now. He's been out of office for 3 years and, you know, this is like 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago and whatever. Something would, you know, at this point, one would think that, you know...
Oh, it wouldn't matter now. Yeah, the judge ruled he's a rapist. Okay, another judge just ruled he's a fraud. You know, like, what more do you want? There's nothing you can say.
There's nothing...
Untouchable.
You can... Absolutely untouchable. He is the Teflon Don.
Yeah.
Not John Gotti. He's the Teflon Don, and certainly nothing's going to happen before the next election. So it's really all a wash. None of this matters. I really don't feel like any of it matters.
Hey, what's
he might
the
lose
word?
Some properties in New York. But,
yeah, real quick, we're about to run out of time. But the backstory. Do you know anything about the story with Lonnie from Scores? He's not invited to Ronnie's wedding, and he says he's not allowed to show up to show his face around. Do you know what's going on with that?
Curious. Yeah, I heard that yesterday on the show.
Yeah.
I was wondering about that myself because they were really, really good friends. But it might be something with Lonnie. I mean, you know, Lonnie's not the picture of health, let's be honest. And, you know, maybe there's something with him he can't go because of, I mean, my first thought goes to health reasons. So I'm not really sure.
Yeah, there was so many crazy shenanigans around Scores. You know, they had their office at the Cuomo brothers law firm. The partner of Blutrich, the partner at Scores, was a lawyer at the Cuomo law firm, and the offices, you went in the front door. You went to the right, it was the Cuomo offices. You went to the left, they had the same receptionist. You went to the left, it was Scores headquarters.
You know, he wrote a book that we were actually going to do a review of, and one of my listeners, you know, read it voraciously and had all sorts of notes on it and things to talk about. And I'm trying to remember what happened with that. Yeah.
Well, Blutrich, I'll tell you what happened. Blutrich came on my show, and all these people came out of the woodwork like crazy, accusing Blutrich of molesting little boys. He was a homosexual guy, and he used to show up at Scores with teenage boys all the time. And there was a whole bunch of lawsuits came out, and he's off. He was in the witness protection anyway. It was tough to book him, but he's off the grid now. We got all the gossip comes out when we have Monique Radio Gunk on the show. All the deep, dark secrets. Monique, what do you want to leave us with? We got like 1 minute left.
Oh, my goodness. Okay. So just to let everybody know that, you know, we do our show Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays on YouTube live. So you can come in and hang out with us. And the chat is very, very lively. You know, we usually have 300-400 people just kind of chatting away like crazy and enjoying the fact that we listen to the Stern Show so you don't have to. And it's kind of like a curious little weird wrap-up show that we do. So come join us. Sometimes it's at 8, sometimes it's at 8:30, sometimes at 9, depends on how tired I am, but sometime around there. And then, then you can come to Radio Gunk /forums if you want to kind of chat about anything Stern-related or just join our little, you know, dysfunctional family.
Yeah, I just subscribed myself to Radio Gunk 100 on YouTube, and there's a little bell that you can put on. If you click on that little bell, you get a notification when they go live and stuff like that.
That's exactly right.
Right. So I'm gonna go in there and check this out. This sounds like a lot of fun. I'm surprised I've waited so long to have you back on the show. You got great personality, great content. Monique, thank you so much, my friend. Radio Gunk Empire, the Empress, Radio Gunk. Twitter, YouTube, she's taking over. Podcast now, she's moving forward. There's no stopping, Monique. Thank you so much, my friend. Good night. Okay.
All right. Take care. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.